5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Everyone, my name is Bobby Shortle, and I'm here with Nick Rocco Scalia, and we are the Intrepid Filmographers. Every mini-series, we chart a course through the full filmography of an under-discussed genre or journeyman filmmaker. In this expedition, we do our best to try and be explorers, using our years of film knowledge to help guide us, but always being open to discovering new things about the medium we love so much. We are currently embedded in the films of Joe Wright, and today, we live at number 7 Vincentplatz, go to school at the Klaus College Gymnasium, and our best friends, sorry, it's going too slow, and our best friends are Rudi Gunther and Clara Scheitz for his 4th film, Hanna. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I was not expecting accents. Like, I thought once we were done with Ben Affleck and all the Boston stuff, we could kind of move on from accents. I will say they are pretty great in this movie. There's a moment, we'll get to it, of course, but Tom Hollander, I think, kind of walks away with this movie, which I didn't even know who he was the first time I saw it. And now that we've watched some Joe Wright films and he kind of is used in very interesting ways by Joe Wright, man, am I a fan of that guy.
He is used in interesting ways, but that way is always some form of little weirdo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like it's like different shades of little weirdo.
True.
And this one might be the most entertaining, but they've all been, varying degrees of sympathetic. Obviously not so much in this movie, but we kind of like him in Pride and Prejudice, and somewhat so in The Soloist. I mean, I think he's one of the best things in The Soloist too, which there's not a whole lot of great things in The Soloist, but
no,
Tom
there's
Hollander
not.
Performance is always worth it.
We left The Soloist behind. The less said about The Soloist, the better. We did the whole podcast
It was a
the
while ago, again, how the sausage is made here.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like we recorded that episode a while ago and saw it, obviously, before that.
It's like a month ago, probably.
A very, very long time. It feels like it's very far in the past at this point.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it does.
We'll try to make the connection here, but it's a little bit more of a gap than we're used to.
But I would say
it's such a different movie
that's what I would say. It's such a different movie that it's kind of okay that we took that gap, because this movie definitely feels like Joe Wright being like, oh, you think I'm like the British fancy director who can only make like period pieces or book adaptations?
He's
and
like,
very
wow, Chemical Brothers soundtrack. Eat
exactly.
That.
Yeah, exactly. Look how many times I can cut the camera. Look how many times like how shaky this camera is when I'm chasing Cate Blanchett or whatever. So, it definitely is a different stylistic exercise for him.
You mean Borderlands star Cate Blanchett?
Yes, Borderlands star
Great,
Cate Blanchett is in this film.
I love that movie. I'm kidding. I haven't seen Borderlands. Nobody's seen Borderlands.
No, that was the problem. Nobody saw it at all.
It's one of those things. Like, I feel like it's like that Borderlands movie, like made by Eli Roth. They spent a ton of money on it. If that movie doesn't actually exist, could you imagine that? Like, you just do YouTube videos with clips from this movie that supposedly exists, but it's not actually real. I kind of feel like that's what Borderlands is. Like, if you went to rent that movie, like, it's disappeared. Like, it won't load for some reason. Like, it's not a real movie.
Yeah, it's like ineffable.
It's a joke. It's ineffable. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It can't be ineffable because Jack Black did a voice in it. So, I mean, it's very real and is everywhere.
That's your criteria.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jack Black just overexposed himself, I think, in the last couple of years. But
pretty excited for that Minecraft movie, are you?
I'm Steve. I'm like, okay, man.
There is an action, but I'm not sure if it's a real action. That's the thing. Like, our world that we live in now is so easily manipulated by artificial intelligence and just the way things are shared, on social media and things like that. That, like, if that was not real, I'd be like, okay, that's probably not real. They say there's going to be a Minecraft movie, but until someone I know has seen it and can tell me about it, like, because literally no one I know has seen Borderlands. So
no,
maybe
that movie was
a
horrendous failure. I can guarantee you that I will have to see the Minecraft movie because my son is very excited about it because he loves Minecraft, and I'm not looking forward to it.
I think they're definitely banking on the 7-year-old who plays a lot of Minecraft audience because who else possibly could be interested in that?
I don't know. It looks terrible. But the Borderlands, another thing where it's just like, you can tell that they got these very good actors to be in the movie because they were like, look, it's going to be like the next thing. Like,
thespian Kevin Hart, Academy Award winner Kevin Hart.
Yeah, you missed out on all the Marvel stuff, really. So, but the video game stuff, this is going to be the next thing that's going to blow up like this.
Yeah.
And like, it's funny and like, whatever. And then it was just terrible. I mean, I shouldn't say I don't know if it's terrible because I didn't see it, but from all
I'm pretty sure it's terrible. Yeah,
all
like
reports.
I don't like to do that either, sight
Yeah.
unseen. But like, I think it's so terrible that maybe it doesn't actually exist. So
Yeah, that's true.
if you're listening to the show and you've actually seen the Borderlands movie, if you could just tell me for real that it's a movie that you've seen,
Mhm.
and then let me know that you are real.
But how do we know
also.
they're real? They could just be a chatbot,
Yeah.
an AI chatbot telling us that they've
Scary
seen
world.
the Borderlands
That's what I'm
movie.
saying.
Yes. But we're here to talk about Hanna, who's very real.
Real.
Very, very real.
Can I lay my cards on the table for this one early on?
Absolutely.
Do you mind if I
Let's
do
do
that?
it.
Okay. Because I saw this when it came out in 2011. And I remember they had a really great trailer. I really liked the premise a lot. And I remember seeing this movie back then and thinking, this movie does everything I expected it to, and I like it, but it kind of didn't make much an impression on me. And seeing it now, and I maybe it says more about me than it does about the film, I absolutely loved this time around. Like, I was consistently impressed. I was consistently engaged and intrigued by it. I love the way it begins and ends. And I think most of the stuff in between is, it makes some really, really interesting choices. And I'm kind of mad at my younger self for being as jaded as I was at the time, because I remember seeing it and thinking, this is good. This is exactly what I expected it to be. And now, looking at it with older eyes and maybe in the context of like the kind of stuff we were just talking about, this movie feels amazing. This movie to me feels like, something very special and unique and interesting. And I don't think I gave it enough credit before.
So very interesting you say this, because I had kind of the opposite reaction, which was when I saw it in 2011, I loved it. I was like all in on it. You could hear, I mean, you can't hear it anymore, I don't think, because I don't think this podcast is up, but I was doing a movie podcast in 2011 with Brian, our friend Brian, and a couple of their people. And you can hear me talk about how much I loved it. And when we did like our end of the year awards kind of thing, I was all over it for me.
Wow. Okay.
I was like really into it at the time. And so this was kind of the one I was kind of dreading the most when we were going to watch this, only because I was like, man, is it going to like plummet out of my esteem, And while I don't think it did not plummet out of my, whatever. Oh, this was right. Sorry. I was looking at our dossier and I thought I had the wrong one because you didn't change the name on the actual document. It still says The Soloist.
Oh, okay. Well, I wanted us to mention The Soloist again.
But it has all the information.
I wanted to remind you that
it has
existed.
all the information, though, so we're good. Anyway, I got distracted there. So, and then watching it this time, I still liked it. I was not like, oh, this was not good. I still liked it, but I liked it less this time than the first time I ever saw it. And I think, we'll get into why. And I think some of it is kind of the problem that's cropping up with me with a lot of this stuff with Joe Wright, not the my main sort of like bugaboo, I guess, with him, which is this is a very different stylistic exercise than he's done previously. But just like those other movies, there are definitely times where I'm like, Joe, just take a breather, man. Like, you don't have to do so much, like, at every single turn and moment. Like, this movie doesn't really have a quiet scene until you're probably 30 minutes into it, where like she's actually just talking to another person in a normal way. And there's not a lot of like crazy camera angles or different movie or different video stocks that we're seeing her through or, whatever. And I think some of that got to me a little bit. Also, I find the structure of the movie, well, I do agree with you. I think first 30 minutes is gangbusters. Last 30 minutes, kind of gangbusters. The middle, I feel like the structure of it was losing me a little bit, and we'll get into why as we go through it.
Well, I remember thinking that very much the first time I saw it. The Morocco stuff, those quiet moments that you were talking about, that worked a little bit better for me this time, because I remember there being a lot more of that, right? Like my sort of impression of this movie is it starts out really great, as you were saying, and then it kind of slows down and really loses interest. But there was less of that than I remembered, and I thought it moved a lot faster. I remember there being some like really kind of dreadfully slow moments in this, and they really kind of took me out of the fast action stuff, which a lot of this film is as well. And I don't know what it was, and maybe it was because there's some really interesting villain performances in this also, and also Saoirse Ronan, having just seen, like, I don't think the first time I saw this, I had just watched a few other Saoirse Ronan movies before I saw this, and like the progression. She is, she looks older. She like, this is a coming of age movie, and we kind of like watching the filmography of Joe Wright is kind of a coming of age story,
Yeah.
this meta story about her. And she's so good in this.
She is,
in a
yes.
very, very different kind of role than we've seen her in before. Yeah, I don't know. I was surprised how much I liked it this time around. I wasn't like you said you were kind of dreading it because you didn't want it to, you didn't want to hate it or feel, kind of lose your initial love for it.
Yeah.
I was like kind of indifferent about it, like when we started talking about Joe Wright, I was more into, I really wanted to see Atonement again. And I really wanted to see all the ones that I haven't seen, like Pride and Prejudice, like the ones coming up. I think this is the last of his movies. Like, I don't think there's any more after this that I've actually seen before.
I'm the exact same place as
we
you.
got Anna Karenina coming up. We got Pan Cyrano, you mentioned. That's him too?
Yep, Cyrano is his latest one.
That's the Peter Dinklage Cyrano?
Yeah.
Okay. Keep forgetting that exists, and that's him. And that's another one of those movies. It's like, if it's not real, you could easily convince me of that. I guess I'm going to know for sure when we actually watch it. But yeah, this was like the one thing in his filmography, this and The Soloist, that I wanted to just see, like, have I actually seen this movie before?
Right.
And I asked my wife about it too, and she didn't remember either. But as far as Hanna goes, I was like, okay, it is what it is. And so I guess I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to.
All right, cool. And we're going to dig into the movie, obviously, and go through, it's based on an original screenplay, right? This is different for him, right? Very different for him. This is the first time he's not doing an adaptation of a book.
Yeah, this feels like it would have been a graphic novel or something, but it
for
is.
Sure.
It's definitely has that kind of vibe. This is right in the young adult, your Hunger Games sort of it. This is Hunger Games. The first one comes out a little before this, I think.
Yeah,
it's like 2009, 2010-ish.
Probably. I'm going to look that up because I don't really remember exactly when it came out. But let me look at it.
Because I feel like that's certainly what they were trying to capitalize here. It was written before that, but
Hunger Games came out in 2012. Came out the year after.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's not even out yet. This feels to me, we're in this era at this point of like the kick-ass, like, the child that can do crazy shit, who's kind of like this is a trope that's happening around this time, especially. And I don't.
Well, and a lot of critics, that seems to be the touch point or the point of comparison for this is Kick-Ass, which I don't know. I guess I saw that movie when it came out. Also really liked that one a lot as well. But I don't know that I made the connection. You got, what's it, Hit Girl?
That's Chloe Grace Moretz as Hit Girl, which is what there's definitely an analog here with Hanna. They're about the same age.
Tonally, they're so very different that I don't know. I don't think I really placed them together at the time.
The violence isn't actually that. I mean, the Matthew Vaughn movie, Kick-Ass, is a little bit more over the top, but
sure it is.
But there's still a lot of the violence.
As I mentioned to you, Hanna is this is easily the hardest PG-13 movie I've ever seen. Like,
it's a pretty hard PG-13 movie.
Very bloody, sadistic, splattery violence in this that you do not say. I mean, PG-13 has become a kid's movie, basically. It's the Marvel movie, the bloodless superhero film.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I remembered from this. And boy, does it not do that. And kind of announces very, very early on that we're gonna bust some heads here in pretty spectacular ways. I really like that about it.
Crazy that Studio Canal is the first logo you see, because it's not the kind of movie you think of when you think of a Studio Canal.
No. And this is an American German co-production.
Yeah.
A lot of it is shot in Germany.
Yes.
There is a little bit of a European flair. I mean, there's some Luc Besson, La Femme Nikita, the professional, very, that guy's fingerprints are all over this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there's definitely the professional.
One of the less salacious things, his fingerprints are all over.
Yeah, well, that is a nightmare human.
Yeah.
So this was another Blacklist script. This is our second Blacklist script, right? We've done after Air, right? Air was the first one we did. It's written by Seth Lockhead and David Farr are the credited screenwriters.
Yeah, this is Lockhead's original idea. He wrote this as a college student, as a graduate student, as a spec script. So again, as much as it feels like an adaptation of something we haven't read, it's not. It's an original idea. If it, I guess it's not the most original idea if it kind of feels like all these other things we've been talking about.
Sometimes I feel like there's like a creative soup in certain times that people just, for whatever reason, are all sort of like keying into, right? And creating things sort of separately, but they all tend to have similar DNA, whether it's because these same people grew up watching a certain thing or something. It's 5 years before that. Right? 5 years before that, they read a book. Everyone read the same book, and it just kind of seeded into their brains, whatever. So what were you saying? Sorry.
With the film Mr. and Mrs. Smith, right?
Yes.
Directed by Doug Liman, written by Simon Kinberg, which was the same thing, right? It was like his thesis script. And again, it takes this very sort of dated, like, by the time this movie and that movie, it was before this came out, right? Like you'd grown up with that Cold War sort of 007 Tom Clancy sort of spy movie thing. And it's like, what kind of like unique fun spin can we put on that? So with that movie, it's a married couple. With this movie, it's a 15-year-old girl. You know, it is still basically a spy movie, but also it's that plus this, you know, this one's a spy movie come fairy tale coming of age movie. So,
yes,
you know, like, I wish I had written something like this as a graduate student. I wouldn't probably be here right now.
Yeah.
I'd be making that Simon Kinberg money. But I do think this genre, for some reason, seems to have really lodged itself in the head of these like budding young screenwriters, and their sort of take on it is, you know, I think Mr. and Mrs. Smith is actually a good comparison for this movie. Tonally different also, but again, it's kind of doing the same genre hybrid kind of thing as that does.
Yeah. Man, Simon Kinberg sure made a lot of money for someone who sucks shit at the job.
Mr. and Mrs. Smith's good scripts.
It's fine. You know, it's fine.
It's a fun movie.
It's a fun movie, perfectly fun movie. But that man wrote so many bad scripts. And again, you never know how Hollywood works. How many people touch a script, you know, that, you know, after someone, you know, is writing it, the director changes it, who knows? But Simon Kinberg very quickly became synonymous with like, Simon Kinberg wrote this superhero movie. It's not
a bad X-Men movie. He'll do it for you.
Exactly. You want to be, you know, the only time you felt hope when it was like Simon Kinberg and like 6 other people's names were on it. You're like, okay, maybe Matt Doherty's name's on this, somebody else's name's on this. Maybe it ends up being, you know, pretty okay. So anyway, Joe Wright's not the first person to be a part of this movie. Danny Boyle is attached to this movie, which makes the most sense ever. It really feels like Joe Wright was like, oh, thank you, Danny, for these storyboards. I'll make a movie that kind of looks like a Danny Boyle movie. Because it does have a Danny Boyle vibe to it at times.
There's an
right?
energy. Yeah,
for sure.
Reminds me of particularly his more like genre stuff that he's done.
Yes. And Alfonso Cuarón also at one point was circling this. The thing that blew me away actually in the dossier you sent was that Saoirse Ronan is the reason why Joe Wright got this job. She's already on the project and she's like, you should hire Joe Wright. Like, he's good. You can't find him. Like, the other 2 people are not going to do it. Joe's a good director. I really like working with him in Atonement. Bring him on, you know, which I would not have guessed, right? That's usually when you get these sort of like star director sort of team ups, usually it's sort of like a package deal, especially if one's like a child actor.
I was going to say, yeah, like how many recommendations from a 15-year-old? She was, I think, a little older than that when she made this.
Yeah, right around there. But right around
it's there. Not too much older. So. So basically a child telling you, hey, hire this guy because I think he's really good. That's not a thing that happens often. But, you know, Saoirse Ronan's kind of a once-in-a-generation talent herself.
Yes, absolutely. Budget of $30 million on this, the same as The Soloist. I can definitely understand why a movie like this would cost $30 million over something like The Soloist.
I'll tell you, I mean, I would have thought the budget was higher on this. I think it looks great for something.
Just not a lot of people in it.
Reasonable.
I think that's how you get around it. So you don't have any Robert Downey Jr.'s or Jamie Foxx's in this movie. You know, you have
You've got the great Eric Bana, who I forgot how much I like that guy.
One of my first notes that I wrote down, Nick, was I love Eric Bana.
Where has he been? What has he been doing? You just don't see much of him anymore, and that's unfortunate.
He just got wrapped up. You know, he got souped up into like, okay, where's our slate of brown-haired, handsome actors? And he just sort of lost out. You know, like I feel like other people just sort of like took his place. It's shot on location in Potsdam and elsewhere in Germany, also in Finland and Morocco. I guess Wright said he was inspired by Stanley Kubrick's Clockwork Orange and David Lynch. So she did all her own stunts in the film with Bruce Lee protege Dan Inosanto helping out in training with him. And then Giorgio Armani designed Cate Blanchett's wardrobe. It's very interesting, like things like that on a movie like this, which is like a very small movie. And then you have stuff like Giorgio Armani, you know, designing clothes.
The Chemical Brothers, Giorgio Armani, the Bruce Lee connection. Yeah, like there's some cool just style stuff in this movie that I really like a lot. I'm a big, you know, style goes a long way with me, I think.
Absolutely. And I mean, a movie like this is a lot about style.
Has a hell of a lot of it. Yeah. That said, the Kubrick, Clockwork Orange, David Lynch influences on this feels a little bit disingenuous because I don't quite see that.
That just feels like, again, someone being like, I want like some cool cred for what I'm going to say. So I'm going to talk about these 2 filmmakers. It's much more of a Danny Boyle movie than it is
it
any
is.
either the other
You
places.
know, it's elevated genre fare, which that's not what those two guys ever did.
No.
Well, is The Shining elevated genre fare? Maybe.
I guess. Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a horror movie. But again, feel like it's very different, right? I feel like Danny Boyle is much more the amalgam here, which is like, for lack of to use an old term, music video style filmmaking and editing, right? With a certain soundtrack and a certain kinetic feeling and vibe that he was really singular on for some amount of time, and then a lot of people started copying what he did, obviously. But
this
is
movie,
a
year before Daft Punk does the score for Tron Legacy, which is our first movie on the show.
That's true. You know, that's very true.
These electronica acts getting the soundtrack gigs around this time. You don't really see much of that anymore. Like, this wasn't that long ago. Let's do that again. I like that.
No, you don't really see that very.
What are the Chemical Brothers up to right now?
Who knows, man?
Chemical Brothers plus Eric Bana plus not Simon Kinberg, who we were just talking about. That no. Anyway, I'm just pitching a project here. I don't know what exactly it is, but yeah. Just getting some heads together, get them packaging something. That's what producers do. Yeah,
they package people together and they go, here, we've got these things for you. We've got Eric Bana and Simon Kinberg and the Chemical Brothers. Green light. So just to quickly go over the plot of the movie, this movie is very easy to talk about plot-wise, and it's very, very simple.
Very simple, very straightforward, and I really like that about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It did not need to be any more complicated than it was.
This is a spy movie with like no intrigue whatsoever, as far as, you know, there's no real MacGuffin, or I guess maybe Hanna herself is the MacGuffin, but it's a spy movie where you need to know nothing about geopolitics at all. You can be completely oblivious to anything that's happened in the world. It kind of like, sorry, now I'm going off the rails a little bit, but this feels like kind of a surreal, like I like, and I don't know exactly the comparison to make, but I love the spy genre, but I'm not real interested in like geopolitics, you know, like I tend to enjoy spy movies where it is more the kinetic action and just sort of the suspense, the mysteriousness, the idea of like identity and the way you have to kind of disguise your identity, much more so than, you know, the premier of this country is going to this place and is going to deliver this particular with this information in it. And, you know, like the whole operation, not that there's not some great movies that are like that, but I tend to enjoy my spy movies simplistic, I guess. You know, I've always, like, when I was very young, I think it comes from being a little kid in elementary school, knowing nothing about the world, but just thinking the suits and the guns and the gadgets and the intrigue and that kind of stuff was cool. Yeah. And, you know, I think a lot of even the Cold War movies, a lot of those, like John le Carré stuff is, you know, it's very much a style genre more than it is for me. And even though his stories were rooted in the reality of it, that's not what kind of interested me about it, because you know, the Cold War era was over at that point anyway. So I like a kind of surreal artsy spy movie. A movie that I have wanted to see my entire life and I've never committed to it is Jim Jarmusch's The Limits of Control. Do you know anything about that one?
I don't know anything about it. I've obviously heard of it, but I don't know anything about it.
It's an artsy Jim Jarmusch spy movie with like no action and no plot and you know, just a lot of Jarmushiness in that genre. And it like, it sounds so appealing to me, and yet I still haven't seen it. But I feel like this movie and that might have some things in common.
I mean, a lot of, I think what this movie is doing is very Bourne adjacent, right? I think it's very highly inspired by the Bourne movies.
Yeah.
Obviously, we've just kind of wrapped up the Bourne movies at this point. And so again, I think it's another big touchstone, right? For when this is getting made and when this is getting written, those type of movies are very popular. And Bourne is changing, the movies are so popular that it's changing how the other movies that have come before it are operating, right? Quantum of Solace, the second Craig Bond movie, is basically a Bourne movie. They were like,
which I like a lot. Yeah.
That's fine. That's what it's doing, right? And even this movie has a lot of that green grass, sort of frenetic, you know, shaky cam.
It does, but
in it.
Greengrass is, you know, that shaky cam style that he applies to those movies kind of ground them in the real world in some sense. You know, it's almost a documentary sort of style, whereas, you know, this, I think, does not exist in anything remotely like the real world.
Well, the fact that Hanna is like some sort of like genetically modified super being, and they're just kind of like, that's kind of like not really a thing. We're just going to tell you that it is, and then we're going to keep going.
I mean, look, I wouldn't put anything past the CIA, but I kind of think that's maybe not something that they've done.
Probably not. And I also wouldn't think that maybe only one person from the CIA would care. Not an infant is the case. But anyway.
No, isn't that how the CIA works? You kind of just go off and do whatever your pet project, and report to the boss if you want. Create some super soldiers, whatever.
Yeah,
not a big deal.
It's like the Winter Soldier program in war. So this movie, it's about a little girl named Hanna. She's a teenager, 15. She lives in the woods with her caretaker, her dad, the person she thinks is her dad, played by Eric Bana, and she's being trained. Right, the whole thing is she's being trained. She's being trained to survive. She's being trained to lie. She's being trained to be aware at all times. She's being combat trained. All of these things, and all in this sort of run up to being ready to basically reveal her location to the CIA operative played by Cate Blanchett, who's going to come and try to kill her, and she's going to kill her instead. She kills a fake version of her, an imposter version of her, thinks she's killed the real person, and then she kind of travels across a few different countries to get back to this meeting place with her father in Germany, where she's supposed to meet up with him. Along the way, she meets a family. She starts to sort of have like normal childhood experiences, all the while she's still being chased by the real, what is her name? Melissa, what's her name?
Marissa Wiegler.
Marissa Wiegler.
Yeah.
And her hired hitmen. One
Love
of them
that
is
name,
Tom
by the way, because
Hollander.
it sounds like a real estate
It
person.
does,
Like,
yeah.
like just some average, like a bank teller or something, but she's like this, very composed, highly trained CIA operative. And
she's like the
that's her
true
name.
evil version of the Tilda Swinton character in Michael Clayton. That's kind of what she
There you
reminds
go.
me of,
Yeah. Actually, it kind of looks like her a little bit.
Yeah, well, they kind of look, I think Tilda Swinton and Cate Blanchett always have like kind of a similar vibe to each other, but they're being chased by these people. Eventually she meets up with her father again, finds out he's not her real father. They have kind of a falling out, and in protecting her from Melissa Wiegler, Eric Bana's character, the father, dies. And then at the end, she ends up killing Melissa Wiegler in a...
Boy, that was the whole movie. Wow, we did it. The end of
It's
show.
very simple. It's like a very simple movie.
Yeah.
So what I want to say to get up right off the start, which is, and we'll break down a little more scene by scene, but the middle part that I'm talking about, where she's kind of traveling. My main issue with the structure of that middle part of the movie, is the fact that she thinks she's achieved her mission. There isn't a lot of like propulsion in that middle section, because she's not traveling across the country trying to escape anything at some certain point, or really, try to like achieve a goal.
She's a fugitive, but she's always been a fugitive, right?
Exactly.
Like even when she's in the woods at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
So the direct threat, because she's not exactly. I mean, she does escape from that facility. We got to talk about that.
We will. We're going to talk about all of
my
this.
favorite scene in the movie.
Yeah.
But I guess my only sort of counter to that is she is still being pursued. She still has some sense that she can't just stay put, right?
Yeah.
So there is.
Well, she's going to Germany to meet up with her dad.
Right. But she knows people are looking for her.
Yeah.
She just doesn't know, they exist in a way that they don't. So I agree with that. And I think what the movie tries to do to compensate for that is cut back and forth a little bit between her father's story and hers, because not that we see a lot of Eric Bana, he kind of goes his separate way, and they're going to meet up.
Mm-hmm.
And, we know that's going to be where the climax of the movie happens. But, we kind of see his progression toward that place also. Yeah. And he is more aware of kind of the threats around him. And then there's also, we spend a lot of time with Cate Blanchett's character here too. Like the villain in this story, as she pursues Hanna, is, we're cutting to her a lot as well. So it's not like that middle section could just be, and I think I remembered it this way. Right. Like, I think that what I remember not liking about this was this movie kind of slows down and becomes this very lyrical, almost like a European road trip movie, right? Yeah. Where, it's this sort of free spirited family, with a camper making their way from Morocco to wherever they're going. And Hanna kind of stows away with them and makes a real friend and kind of gets a real family sort of vacation experience kind of thing. And I remember that being a lot slower and a lot less, a lot more of this movie than it actually turns out to be. But I guess I see what you're saying about that stuff.
And I don't mind.
But it doesn't work either. Like it's kind of nice. The little, the relationship she builds there, it's really unresolved, right? Like
that's the thing. It's unresolved.
The other thing is they kind of just disappear from the movie and we don't care about them anymore. And that's the problem, I think.
It's unresolved. And also I just think there's a little too much of it. That's the thing, that it loses I think the momentum of the beginning and the end can survive a little bit, that lyrical European road trip. but I just think there's a little bit too much of it. And some of it is kind of repeated stuff that's happening, and I feel like there could have been a little bit of maybe a rewrite or, a rework that kind of compressed out a little bit. The movie was 20 minutes shorter. I don't think it would have suffered at all, and I think that's my main gripe with that middle part of the movie.
It's not quite 2 hours, but it's just shy of 2 hours. And I could see a better version of this. Yeah. Like a 95 minutes.
Yeah. It feels longer than it is. That's my main,
because it is very simple. It's elevated genre fare, but because there's, it is like I'm saying,
getting choked up.
Yeah. I was thinking about there's a moment or two in this. What was I saying here?
Elevated genre fare, a little bit.
This idea that it's a spy movie that doesn't really have anything, like who the major players are, and it's a very, very simple kind of stripped down. It's the bare essentials of what that spy movie chase narrative thing is, and there's not a lot of, like I said, there's no intrigue. So it feels like maybe some of that is missing, and because this is not strictly an art movie, I mean, it's elevated genre fare, but it's an action movie, right? And when we are not seeing what Hanna is capable of, and we're not getting these incredible action scenes, it feels like we should be doing that a little bit more, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, I think like having one or two scenes where she has the scene like where she goes out with that double date or whatever, I think is a nice scene, right? And I think I like that too. It speaks to her character. It speaks to kind of where she's deficient, and where she is proficient. She
jacks that guy up at the end of that scene.
Yeah. I think that's really nice. I think like having that little scene, that sort of like kind of sapphic scene with the friend, I think is nice.
Bed. Yeah.
It's
the
all
stuff with the little brother is cute.
Except like it's like little brother's just there to be able to tell Melissa Viegler where she's going, basically. That's like why he exists.
It is, but I sort of like the idea. She's an only child like me. Yeah. So it's like she gets this experience of having a sibling for a little while, an annoying little brother. So I think that's actually kind of fun.
And I think Olivia Williams is quite nice in this movie too. I think she's very good, and I
like Olivia Williams a lot. Yeah.
But let's rewind. Let's go back. The movie opens in the woods with just the two of them, and Hanna is hunting, and it's this bookend thing, right? This moment where she shoots a deer with an arrow, and she's kind of got to chase it, and she says, "Oh, I just missed your heart," and then she shoots the deer in the head, basically.
Yeah, and then cut to title card. Love that.
Giant text. I'm a big fan of giant text.
Me too.
I like giant text.
That's the movie Kill List does that really beautifully. Ben Wheatley's Kill List. Yeah, I love the opening of this, right?
Yeah,
it is
very good.
Silent, again, very lyrical, very fairy tale inspired. Like there's a lot of visual and sort of narrative inspiration from fairy tale. This is Little Red Riding Hood, right?
Yeah.
She's stalking through the forest. We get a sense right away, like you said, of her skill set, her ability to track an animal and, follow the trail and put it out of its misery kind of thing, like she does. Yeah. Cabin that her and her father live with. It's very, it's very Little Red Riding Hood, Hansel and Gretel kind of stuff. And, I really like that approach. And we don't get any like pounding techno music at this point to sort of take us out of that.
No.
We get that later.
Saoirse Ronan, we talked about this a little bit of atonement, has like the craziest blue eyes like in the world.
Against this stark white forest backdrop. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. I mean, also just her look,
shot movie.
Like just like her almost white blonde hair. She has like white eyebrows. Like, it's like, and her eyes are just like these like orbs in the middle of her face that are just so stark and stunning, like every moment, and she's able to portray so much emotion so simply and clearly just from the jump. And we talked about this in Atonement as well, how she's just these micro expressions she's able to do where you're able to read all of this stuff on her face so quickly. And, this scene is really great. And then we move right to the kind of like the fight with with Eric Bana's character, right? Eric Bana's like, you're dead or whatever, comes up behind her. So but I was thinking when we were talking about this, everybody in this movie is doing an accent that's not theirs. Like, every single person in this movie is doing something else, except for like Olivia Williams and her family. They're all.
I think my favorite is Cate Blanchett's American accent.
Yeah, I always like her kind of American accent. Yeah. She's got that like. She's very good at like this sort of like harsh, like kind of career woman like I don't take no shit sort of like voice. But, you know, they have this fight scene basically, and she wins basically, you know, the fight. And there's all this whole thing about her snapping his neck. She could have snapped his neck or whatever. And he kind of makes her take the deer back by herself. And you get a sense of their life at this point, right? Like, he's basically kind of like going over facts with her. She's repeating like statements. She's like repeating like mission statements. He's reading the encyclopedia to her. When she asks about music, he like reads the entry for music. Like, again, some of the stuff where I'm like, Joe, like, I get the point of what you're doing, but like this man, there's no way this man is this much of a robot that when his daughter asks, what's music like? He's like, music is a collection of notes that make a sound. I'm like, he's heard music in his life before.
A weird homeschooling situation that's happening here. Yeah.
Like, she can't have music? Like, what? Have any music? It doesn't make any sense. You know, and I think it's still a nice like setup of who they are and what they are.
She should meet, what's the guy from The Soloist? You know, it'd be cool to have those two characters come together.
The little like a little metaverse, Joe Wright metaverse.
Yeah.
We get a nice little unshowy kind of oneer in here when she comes into the hut, because it kind of goes up the stairs with her and then pans down to him and she comes back, and it's nice. It's like it's kind of more like the Pride and Prejudice sort of, let's use this oneer to just show you what this space is, right? How small this space is, how on top of each other their lives are.
Yeah. What a great set. What a production design. Set dressing here is, you know, it is very cozy, but also you kind of feel the cold of it. Yeah, it is. Yeah. Like I said, it's that like quintessential fairy tale home. You know, it's what you imagine, you know, the woodsman lives in, or Little Red Riding Hood lives in, kind of thing.
It's all lit by like candles for the most part when they're inside, which is really nice. Like, again, he is an excellent like visual stylist when it comes to this kind of stuff. He definitely has a knack for creating beautiful frames and lighting things in interesting ways, and it keeps going here. And you know, we're given also, like, Hannah's looking at a picture of a woman, and we're in a sense that it's obviously that it's her mother. It kind of is easy to put those two things together, and we start to get this idea, right, of, you know, her being ready or not, right? And you're kind of leaving that. This is the little bit of intrigue in the movie before, you know, about 10 minutes in or whatever, we kind of get it's stated in almost plain English, like what is going on, which is
Can I ask, like, just a plot thing, right? So, you know, the MacGuffin, the device here is this like tracking device, this thing that's going to
like a transponder.
It's transponder that's going to reveal her position to Marissa and have them come out. Like, why? Like, I get the idea, you know, she has to be ready. She has to essentially come of age to complete her training so that she can, you know, call this person out and basically confront her. Why doesn't he just go and handle that? And I don't understand, right?
Well, I think the way I took it was that in his mind, it was like her revenge to take, right? That like it's her mother who got shot by her, and so it should be her who kills Marissa. That is what I took from it.
I guess that's fair, but I mean, you're kind of depriving her of having any kind of a normal life or a normal childhood so you can train her for this one thing. And it's like, is it worth it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the other part
maybe subtextually that's kind of what the film is trying to say.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, she's not a child, right? She was, even though this man loved her in whatever way he could, she still was.
She's born and bred to be a killing machine. I don't know. I mean, if that's what it's trying to do, I don't think it really articulates that very well. No. And the thought that, like, you know, you have to do this, you have to kill her, I'll meet you in Germany kind of thing. I'm not sure not that this is believable in any way, but, you know, it is preposterous in a way that I think it goes a little beyond, you know, as where I'm willing to suspend my disbelief.
Well, the other like 2 points I want to say too is, I think one, and again, I don't think the movie communicates this particularly well, but I think the other idea, right, is Wiegler is not going to just show herself for anything, right? She's not going to just show up.
She's smart enough to know it has to actually be her.
Yeah, exactly. And he knows she's not going to be the one who actually comes to the cabin to take him, right? And if he's there, they're just going to kill him, right? There's no way he's going to live through that. They're just going to kill him, right? So, but they won't kill the girl because he knows that they think, or at least Marissa knows, that this girl might be special, right?
Right.
The other people don't know. They don't know.
The plan is to get her kidnapped, which is exactly
what they do.
Like to have them imprison her and have her or kind of fight her way out from the inside.
Yeah. Where they're going to take her, I'm sure they don't know exactly, right? But I think they're pretty has pretty good faith in her skills to get out.
Well, they take her to the leftover sets from Eon Flux,
Yeah,
which is somewhere
sure.
underground in Morocco.
Yeah. That one hallway with like the stone hallway
curved
with the
walls,
curved walls and like the pillars where the light comes in.
I'll tell you though, I liked it in Eon Flux and I liked it here.
Absolutely, it's a cool set, cool design. And I always think it's interesting when we mention this. It's a spy movie. It's an action thriller, and a lot of times those movies have bigger budgets than $30 million, right? So it's fascinating to watch this movie and go, okay, I can kind of see the limitations of the money they had, but very cool how they got around a lot of it, right? Which is like, there's not a lot of actors in this movie. There's not a lot of like, big locations or sets that they're going for. I don't know where this place is that they shot this thing, but it's probably a place that they found, that they could
it's like a power plant or something like that, like one of those like industrial buildings decommissioned. But I kind of like that, right? I mean, they do that a lot in these movies. Even like the Bond movies, some of them do it. Like normies like us are never going to see like what the halls of power inside the CIA's secret bunker actually looks like. So maybe it looks exactly like probably not, right? Yeah, it probably looks like the most boring, monotone, shitty looking office building ever, and that's where all the world decisions are getting made. But the movies get to have a little bit of fun with that, like interpret that in a fun-looking way, and I really enjoy that. When we see these, the curved brutalist architecture and that kind of stuff. Like, why not?
Absolutely, why not?
It's probably just a sewer or an aqueduct or something. Yeah. But
and again, why the CIA comes to this cabin, knocks her out, and then takes her to an underground facility in like Morocco. I don't know why they didn't just take her back to the United States, but if they're going to take her to Morocco from wherever, Germany, Russia, wherever they were when they picked her up, but
you're not supposed to think about that stuff.
No, you're not supposed to think about that stuff.
Like, I'll give this movie this also. There's none of those. One of the things I hate that these types of movies always do is, here's the title card, right? That tells you exactly where we are. I forgot what I was watching, but it's like London and the shot is like Big Ben and the Ferris wheel and the Thames River. It's like, we fucking get it. Like, we don't need those, like, with the cursor, that kind of text. They always do that. And
I don't mind that, though. I kind of like that.
I don't like that. No, especially if it's very obvious where we are. Like, okay, London's pretty recognizable. If it's a city I've never heard of in some foreign country, maybe do it then.
They do it in Mission Impossible, though, and I like it.
Yeah. I kind of like that this movie, like, very distinctly avoids doing that. Like, it doesn't really matter where we are. And, if we're mentioning a place, it's just because we need to know where the character's going in some sense.
Here's the thing. It doesn't totally matter where we are, but this movie does concern itself with, like, geography and a person getting from one place to another.
A road trip movie.
Yeah,
but, like,
I would like to have been a little bit more informed about where I was.
The desert, quote unquote, and Europe. It's like a nebulous version of what those things are, right?
Yeah, they may take a ferry from Morocco to Spain or something at some point, right? That's where they're going, right?
Yeah.
At whatever point, but. So she gets.
Oh man, I'm gonna forget to mention it. I'll just mention it now. There's a water bridge in this movie, which that I really like architecture. I really like engineering. There is nothing cooler in the world to me than a water bridge. And so I looked it up. This is an actual bridge. I read the whole history of it. It was like 2 weeks ago, so I don't remember much. But yeah, if you look it up, I think it's on IMDb. You can find the name of this water bridge and where it is and read the incredible story of the construction of this thing. The shot is literally 3 seconds long. We see the barge kind of traveling over it. That was one of those things where I had to pause the movie. It's like, look at that. I love those things. So, just a personality quirk of mine, not important to anything. Although, I mean, I do think it nicely fits the aesthetic of this movie. It is a little bit surreal, otherworldly to see a bridge, with water in it that goes over water.
For sure.
Very, very cool. Very, surreal sort of piece of engineering.
Yeah. So Hanna gets taken to this underground bunker.
You're not so into water bridges. I think
it's cool. I don't have like a lot of anything to say about it.
Oh man, that's my jam. All right.
I think so Hanna gets taken to this bunker and she is under observation. And I had forgotten the whole like she's genetically engineered person thing. So I
did too, actually. I thought she was just she'd been trained from a young age, right?
And put her in this room. You think they would be like, okay, let's kind of like be soft on her. Let's try to get information out of her. But they put her in like this like cell. They have her hooked up to all this stuff. They take her blood or whatever.
I mean, they're not wrong.
They're not wrong. They should have done more.
Yeah, some leg irons and some, they should have restrained her a lot better than they did. I love this scene so much, though.
It's really good. It's really, really good. So we get a little bit of hint, right, of the blood thing. Someone's like, oh, something's weird about our blood work or whatever, in another room. They kind of leave it for then. And she demands to talk to Marissa Viegler. And so I should talk about this other scene first, because I really like this scene. When they activate the thing and, Blanchett gets the call and she goes in like that meeting, right? And she has to kind of like play down what's going on. She's like, yeah, we should just go get him. And she's like, why? Just have Interpol go get him. Like, why do we care? He's like an old asset. Yeah,
this is a personal thing for her. She wants to be in charge, but she doesn't really want anybody to know. She hires when we meet Tom Hollander's character. Sorry, she, he is not an agency. He's an asset, but he's not with the agency. That's the guy you call to kind of do some dirty work that you don't want your colleagues to know about. Yeah. And I like that this is all kind of a clandestine thing for her, right? Like the CIA is not really the villain in this, which I'm fine with that in other movies, but I like that this is kind of Marissa's like personal vendetta rather than, an operation, right?
Yeah. She's definitely like the Chris Cooper of this movie or whatever, or the Brian Cox of this movie or whatever.
Yeah.
But she, in that scene, I love how she kind of plays it off, and she's like, well, this guy knows a lot of stuff. You don't really want some foreign government talking to him. That whole lure of like, I'm just a very like withdrawn bureaucrat. Like this is all just about making sure the spreadsheets line up kind of thing. And it's really this like seething sort of like issue underneath it. Right. And you show it when she's like doing her teeth all like hard, she's bleeding and stuff. I'm like, all right, let's calm down with the teeth stuff. Like, just watch The Substance, and I'm like, I can't handle any more fucking teeth stuff and anything. But I really like that scene a lot. So then we get this next scene, and she demands to talk to Marissa Viegler, and she's kind of communicating with like the guy on the ground in that place, and she's like, all right, I'm coming, and he's sort of like, no, you don't have to come, we can handle this, and she's like, shut up or whatever. But then we get this fake Marissa Viegler who comes in. She kind of styled with her red hair and
played by Michelle Dockery, star of the recent hit movie Flight Risk.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
This is going to come out like, I feel like when this episode drops, no one will have talked about Flight Risk for months and months and months. That was Mel Gibson's film with Mark Wahlberg.
That's true.
Lasted about a week and got terrible reviews, and
it did.
And nobody saw it.
It did.
Anyway, I was like, because I didn't recognize the actress. She was like on Downton Abbey or something like that.
Downton Abbey is like the big thing. Yes.
Yeah, but I saw her name. I was like, wait a minute, where have I seen that name really recently? And it was because of reading terrible reviews of Flight Risk. Anyway.
Yes. So she's
great in this scene, though. She's the she's the decoy. I believe False Marissa is what she's credited.
That's what she credited in the movie, which is crazy. What a crazy credit.
It's a great band name, by the way.
Yeah. And she gets killed by Hanna gruesomely. And then Hanna just goes on a rampage.
Very crackly neck snap here, which I really like.
Sure. Yes, for sure.
Like, even the sound design of this movie is like, wow, how did this get past the MPAA? Which I think great.
Yes, definitely. I would say Michelle Dockery is also in the Red Riding trilogy of movies,
which I someday really need to see.
Yeah, you would like those movies a lot. Those movies are excellent. I mean, she had a very big sort of British TV career. Was most of what was what her fame came from, but. That kicks off the scene where, Hanna goes nuts and basically kills a bunch of CIA or military operatives, and escapes this facility. And this is where I think like all of the crazy editing and stuff works really, really well, right? I think that it fits in the scene great. The score is pumping at this point. There's no more stability in the score.
The cuts are timed to it perfectly. It's really intense. The way this builds, and I love the way that false Marissa kind of tries to ingratiate herself with her. And like, we kind of know the whole time, like we almost, even though she's a villain, right? Like she's on the side of the bad guys. We feel a little bad for her because we know what's coming. We know that Hanna sees right through her shit. And like, you don't realize what you're really poking the bear here. And something bad is going to happen to you. I forgot it was as graphic and as brutal as it actually was because this is, again, a PG-13 movie. But yeah, she has no mercy whatsoever. And she just like kills her way through this facility. And man, I think this was the moment where I was like, why was I disappointed or why was I not thrilled by this movie before? This fucking kicks ass.
Yeah, it's a
like,
kick-ass scene.
Give me more of this.
Yeah. The way she does it is she like gets all fake emotional Hannah and like hugs her and is
Oh,
crying.
I love that. Yeah. Yep. Like just the slightest hint of sadism there. Like, she's going to make these people hurt. And I like that.
Yeah.
That
and
choice.
and they're the real Marissa, and they're like, get out of there. Like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
And the way we keep cutting back to that is terrific also.
And the reaction shot of Blanchett when that woman gets her neck broken is so great.
Yeah.
She's like,
well, there's that transfer there. Like, that's supposed to be me.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Look on her face. She says like, holy shit. Like, and then she goes ham. And then, really, I think some cool, not just the fighting, but also the way she escapes, like the way that she hides is also really impressive. The way she gets up that passageway or whatever.
Yeah, she climbs like a tunnel through a shaft. It's very THX. It's very early George Lucas, almost has that 70s sci-fi sort of feel.
Yeah,
I like,
sure.
This sequence is terrific.
Yeah. And there's no way she can, we had a great like dramatic irony, like line, there's like, she's going to escape. There's no way she can escape, whatever. And then she pops her head out of the, out of the hatch into the desert.
Right, which we haven't seen. We don't know where the space is. We kind of cut from the forest to wherever she is, this underground bunker. And so it's because I forgot.
Me too, totally,
what the setting was. Yeah, she kind of emerges. Luckily enough, there is a family vacationing that just so happens to be on that same plateau in the middle of nowhere where she emerges out of this hole.
No, not exactly, because she takes a little ride on the bottom of that truck.
She does. She
rolls under the truck and takes a little ride.
Okay, so you're building a secret military bunker in another country. There's obviously a fence and a wall around it. Why would you have this exit shaft that is clearly outside the boundaries of the
well, you
the
wouldn't, though.
compound?
Here's the thing, though. You wouldn't, because if it's a secret CIA black site or whatever, you wouldn't have a wall or a gate or anything. You would all be underground. Because
maybe a fence would be a good idea.
No, because that signals to people there's something here to find, right? So it's sort of like in Stranger Things, but there's that base under the desert or whatever. I think it's a similar idea, right? Where you don't put a gate up, you don't put a fence up, because that signals to people there's something here that you should be looking out for. Instead of just like middle of the desert, there's nothing, right? So it's like no one's even gonna look hard because there's nothing here.
It seems like a convenient way out for her, but I guess that's true.
She takes a little ride on the bottom of that truck, and at this point, and this will kind of lead into later on, I think, when I talk about something I also bothered me a little bit. Hannah is the best at everything she's doing, right? She's incredibly strong, smart, agile.
How would she be? Right. Like, she's never seen a truck before.
No, she's never seen a truck before.
Out in the middle of the forest, like, yes, she's learned to fight, but like, there are certain just sort of like she has no experience with technology of any kind whatsoever. And
I think that's where Eric Bana kind of has failed her a little bit. Yeah. Where I'm like, dude, you taught her how to like skin a deer, but eventually you knew she's on to go out with the world. You didn't teach her what a fucking TV was. Like, like a lot of little things you could have taught her, like, to kind of know. And I mean, some of that makes it more interesting.
Maybe in that encyclopedia, it'll tell you exactly how much clearance you have under the bottom of a truck, so you don't scrape your skin off.
Eric Bana probably told her what a truck was, right? I'm assuming, but
how to grab onto the bottom of one. Maybe he's shown her a couple of movies, because it is a real cliche in movies when people do this. I was like, I bet she's going to be on the bottom of that truck. Like, Joe Wright films it if it's a big surprise, as if it's something. Yeah. Shocking, but it's not.
It's not. We've seen it a lot. Also,
we're just kind of waiting for her to be
there. He definitely
there.
didn't show her any movies because she didn't even know what a TV was when she goes into that like little hospital that she stays at. She doesn't even know. She's freaking out because there's a light bulb. So there's a lot going on. But she does happen upon a family, right? But she didn't like link up with that family at that point. She just kind of like meets them.
No. They kind of just encounter each other in the middle of the desert, and that kind of leads her toward like civilization, quote unquote.
Yes, and she gets to this sort of this guy who has a couple rooms to rent or whatever, and he's very kind to her. She speaks his language, which he was not expecting her to, right? And she kind of gets this place to stay. And this felt the most like The Soloist, I think, of any part in this movie, where she started having this like sensory overload with all of the technology and stuff. And I don't think it's badly made at all. I think it does communicate.
I don't either, but I think it's incongruous with the earlier scene where she's in this very high-tech base where she's imprisoned and is seeing things well beyond, this crappy hotel in the middle of nowhere. And, they've got light bulbs and television and radio and stuff. Like, those people had like whatever, all the sort
There
of...
were lights in her room,
11 CIA technology that money could buy.
Yeah.
So she shouldn't be quite so overwhelmed by this stuff. She also like killed a bunch of people, like no problem, and kind of handled that situation really, as you were saying, as perfectly as one possibly could.
Yes.
So yeah, she sort of lacks vulnerability in this moment, and the movie is working hard to sort of give it back to her, and I'm not sure I buy that either.
Yeah, and I think where this movie fails a lot in this section is this trying to give her vulnerability that I don't think is earned a lot of the time, right? Including just selectively deciding when she is
Out of touch.
naive
Yeah.
or at a disadvantage physically when she's in an altercation with one of these people who are chasing her. It's like, I don't understand. Like, she killed all of these people with no problem, and now all of a sudden this one person like is going to give her all this trouble. Like, I think that is where the movie can't quite decide what, I guess, for lack of, to use a superhero term, what Hannah's power level is, right? Like what she's going to, I think the stuff like how she interacts with people, how she interacts with the boy, the new family. I think all that stuff works because it would make sense, right? She's only known one person her entire life.
Well, right. She knows two kinds of people, her father and people that want to kill her.
Exactly.
And so she can deal very effectively with exactly those two very, very specific types. Yes. But anything else, just this sort of regular hippie-ish family. But, you know, they're fairly normal folks.
Yeah, definitely.
She has no idea how to relate to them, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. And I think like the scene where she goes to dinner with them, right, I think is really nice. And I think works.
I like that a lot, yeah.
And I love when she's like, oh, my mother died. And he's like, how'd your mother die? From 3 bullets. Which I think is really funny. And I think like, you know, she knows enough when to lie. I mean, she still sounds like a robot when she's like that speech in the beginning where she's like, we're from, you know, Wittenplatz and my friends are this and this. I'm like, Eric Bana, don't tell her not to talk like that.
Yeah,
like, that's just background information.
Well,
that
I was just, for the first time in a long time, one of my favorite movies is Reservoir Dogs. And the scene I really like there is with Tim Roth's character, where he learns basically how to be undercover and how to tell a lie like that. And you don't just repeat it word for word, but you sort of envision it as if it was actually true, as if you were actually there. And you would think her very accomplished spy father, or, you know, surrogate father, whatever he is, would kind of have had some time to walk through that with her, right? Like, no, you don't just say this like that, like a robot, like someone has told you to say exactly this, like you're reading from a script, but, you know, make them believe that that's your actual world. Like that's where you grew up. Yeah,
absolutely. Much like another film we covered, Destroyer, right? Where we have the Sebastian Stan, Nicole Kidman sort of repeating their story, kind of getting it down.
Yeah. Which I think I mentioned Reservoir Dogs there too.
Yeah. So I feel like, you know, that stuff, like I said, is I think is a shortcoming of the movie, but I do enjoy like this dinner scene between them. You know, this is also where we get the introduction of the Tom Hollander characters right around here. You know, Blanchett goes to his like bar or whatever.
The thing that made me laugh so much here, and I don't know what it was, but he has like that German accent. So she walks in, we know he's kind of a contact, an asset or something like that. And he's talking about this dancer on stage at this like underground club that he has. And he pluralizes the word genitalia. He says genitalias. She has male and female genitalias. And I just laughed hysterically at that. Not because the concept is funny, but because pluralizing that word for some reason made me laugh a lot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Genitalias. I love it. I'm still an 11-year-old at heart. So.
Now, I know you love Tom Hollander in this movie. And I think he's fun. I think he's fun in the movie. I just think it's like...
Does he feel a little bit like an SNL character for you?
A little bit like an SNL character.
Late in the show, like, you know, a post-12:30 SNL
the
character.
12:50 sketch or whatever.
Yes,
the 12:55
but
sketch.
I like that, man. You know, just remember the Will Ferrell, the Jaguar guy?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
So this reminds me a little bit of that. And that's another thing that I just find like a lot funnier than it probably actually is. And, you know, it had a little bit of that energy, had a little bit of Detour going on, little sprockets in it. And I don't know. I think it's a lot of fun. I think Tom Hollander is just he's very game for this stuff, right?
Very game, yes.
He's an actor that, you know, he will put himself in sort of very ridiculous positions. We saw it in Pride and Prejudice as well. You know, he's willing to kind of embarrass himself on camera.
Absolutely.
And here, you know, the bleach blonde hair. I'll be honest with you. I did not know. I don't look at the cast list. I try to just, you know, watch a movie as it is, and I'll look up stuff, you know, like I looked up Michelle Dockery afterward. It took me a good 15, 20 minutes. He'd been at a couple of scenes where I was like, holy shit, that's Tom Hollander.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well,
Oh my
because he
God.
looks at, it's the bowl haircut. Like he doesn't look like himself.
That face though, I can't not
Yeah, but he's like
recognize that
in
face.
pretty good shape here.
Yes.
He's a little doughy in the other movies, but it looks like he's, packed on some muscle here. And he is this kind of like smarmy European character, which is not something we've seen him as before. And yeah, it took me a while to, because he looks a lot like Thomas Lennon.
He absolutely does.
Like at first I was like, oh, this is like Thomas Lennon doing a semi-serious role. And I love Thomas Lennon as well. And then I was like, oh no, it's another Tom that I am quite familiar with.
Yeah.
As of lately.
I think that the other part of it too is just speaking of the other thing about Hanna and her power level. I just don't for 1 second believe any three of these mooks that she hires could take on Hanna.
No,
after what I've seen.
They are quite incompetent, these guys.
Yeah. But then when they actually fight her, they kind of get the upper hand on her a little bit. And that's why I'm just like, I think I'm more against them, I guess, in a lot of ways, is because I just don't feel like they're great foils. Like, like in like the Born Supremacy, right? Carl Urban, he's the bad guy. He kills Frankie Potente at the beginning, spoilers. And then it's sort of like the thing chasing him the whole movie, right? And you believe that there is a chance he could beat Jason Bourne, right?
Yeah, well, he's a highly trained, formidable person like Jason Bourne is. Yeah, these are just some like low-end, European criminals, like these drug prostitute. I don't know exactly what their business is, but they're low-level parts of some kind of criminal organization.
And that's what I needed. I just needed somebody that was up against her that I felt like could take her, and
well, I will say, right, like what you generally do is, there's a good Hanna and like a bad Hanna, right? The direct foil that has like the exact same genetic whatever, super soldier bullshit as she has. That is, the bad version of her, the dark version of her. And I'm glad we never actually get that.
Absolutely.
Right?
I didn't need that. I didn't need dark Hanna, for sure not. But I just needed some other threat that felt more...
would have been cool, though, if it was Hanna with an H. They could have both been named Hanna.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah, because it's the same.
Anyway. Simon Kinberg is going to write it.
Come on. That's better than a Simon Kinberg idea, right?
I know, you just put an H on the end of the name. That sounds like an exact Simon Kinberg idea if I ever heard one. Sorry, Simon Kinberg. I don't know why you're catching strays in our Hanna episode, but...
I brought him up. Sorry, I brought you into this, Simon Kinberg.
So, and during this, right, we're seeing the Eric Bana stuff, like you said. We're seeing him kind of... It is like straight out of the Bourne identity, basically. Everything that's happening to him as he's going through this like thing. So even when he comes up on the shore and those cops come after him, and he kills them. But I will say... when they figure out where he's going to be, right? And I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but I want to talk about the scene. The fight in the subway station, I think, is my favorite scene in the movie.
Long take is incredible.
It's incredible.
It's one of those long takes where it's like, this is still going.
Yeah.
This is still happening, And I know that's Joe Wright's thing, right?
Yeah.
Like it is. I think it's a little shorter than the one in Atonement, but there's so much more going on here in terms of, the character and the action. Like we see him come out of this subway platform. He gets off a train, kind of walks down a couple of blocks, then goes down into the subway. I love the way it's revealed, right? Like it doesn't look like he's in any danger. We start to see these people on the street, the way the camera kind of just casually drifts by as we're following him. And there's a guy just leaning up against a post or something like that. We start to see his antagonists start to emerge, and there's more and more and more of them. He does this thing, again, these little things. I love this so much in films. He gets on the escalator going down into the subway platform, and he just very casually unbuttons the one button on his blazer because he knows he's about to get into a physical hand-to-hand fight here. Yeah. And you can't have your jacket button there. It just looks so... It's the fucking GQ, like, I'm about to fight right now. I don't want to mess up my jacket. I'm not going to, like, throw it down. I'm not going to do the American badass thing. Yeah. I'm going to do the sophisticated European. Let me just unbutton my jacket, and then we can fight. Love it.
It's great.
And it's a great fight, too. And brutal, we get one of those, like, knife in the throat, chucks a knife at one of these guys, shoots one of them. It's a very R-rated scene. And again, a movie that I'm surprised is not an R-rated movie.
Yeah. And Lisa, that beginning of the shot where he's walking and we're starting to get, like, the sense of the people there, I like it because it's very much giving you the perspective of what Bana himself is noticing, right? Where he's noticing that this person is like staring at him.
He's just kind of clocking this guy and this guy. Yeah. It's like, it's a little spy movie in miniature almost in one shot. It's really cool.
And he, like I said, he goes down to that thing and that whole protracted oneer and goes into the fight scene, and it's great. And the choreography is great. The pacing of it's great. You know, you feel the physicality of it, right? And you really feel like, again, talking about power levels, the only shot these guys have is that there's a bunch of them, right? Because if any one of them was fighting them, they'd be dead instantly. There'd be no chance, right? And this is where he learns that Marissa Vigeler is alive, right? Because there's a radio that comes in, a message that comes in, and you know he thinks she's dead because Hanna sent him a postcard that says the witch is dead or whatever. And
yeah,
so,
very very choice wording there.
Yeah. Well, there's a whole grim fairy tale thing about this, right? So we have that kind of motif going on. Yeah, we don't know how really literal it's going to be
until the viewer over the head with it yet, but we will. Don't you worry.
Yeah, you'll know how literal we're being.
We're going to walk right into the big bad wolf's mouth later in this movie, but not there yet.
Yeah. So, and then we get another great scene, which is that scene where he goes to Vigeler's hotel room, or her home, or whatever she is, her hotel room, and like, you know, kills the people outside, and then like, you know, like basically wanted to bust down the door. And I love that moment with Blanchett where she's like frozen for that time, and she's like, you know, get up. And then when he comes in, she's gone. Really like that moment, you know, seeing it from that angle. You don't usually see it from that side of things, right? You would see it from Bana's side of things. He would break in and she would be gone, right? And that's it. But getting that moment, I think, was really good.
She's an interesting villain. Like, I wouldn't call her a sympathetic villain, you know, but like her sadism is not, you know, there is a little bit of that there, but also I think some of that like professionalism really is who she is. Mm-hmm. And, you know, she is not so emotionally attached to this that like, this is her job. And, you know, she understands, like when she shoots the mother, right? Like she's not a cold-blooded killer any more than the job requires her to be, I think.
Yeah.
She doesn't want a lot of collateral damage. Like she knows it's going to happen, but she's not just a sort of psychopath, right? Yeah. And I sort of like that. Not that she's sympathetic, not that I like her necessarily, but I think she's a little bit more human, I guess. Like
definitely human. Yeah, you definitely
like there's although she is trying to come off as cold and clinical and calculating, and she certainly is that, there is something going on below the surface there. And I do think that's why you cast a Cate Blanchett in this role rather than someone who just looks, you know, beautiful, but kind of robotic.
Yeah. I mean, you are forgetting about
that moment's a great example.
Sorry. Yeah. You are forgetting about where she shoots an old woman in the back of the head just for being the mother of the other woman she killed.
Well, again, collateral damage.
She didn't have to go kill that woman. That woman had no information, had nothing, you know? But, and that scene's really good too, when she kills...
Well, the big bad wolf eats the grandma, right?
It's very true.
That's Hannah's grandma.
Very true. But, you know, that scene is really good as well. Blanchett's great in that scene. I mean, this is a classic, like, ham Blanchett performance, right? There are multiple tiers of Blanchett performances. It definitely falls into, like, I know what movie I'm in, and I know what's being asked of me, and I'm going to be like the hammy version of my whole thing, right?
She's great at it, though, right?
She's wonderful at it.
It's not so campy that you can't believe it in the moment. I really like that.
Like, because in the end, she's still Cate Blanchett, and she still there's still a depth of emotion and reality to her that she doesn't fully get rid of ever, really, you know? And I think that's what makes her such a wonderful performer in general, you know? And I think, like...
But there's not a lot of that in Borderlands.
I bet not. It's crazy that she's in that movie. It's really crazy that she's in that movie. But I did want to speak on Bana really quick because, you know, we mentioned his, like, what happened to him kind of thing. And this movie is really the last, like, I guess, legitimate, like, you know, movie he's in, really. And not legitimate movie he's in, but, like, the last, like, you know, well-received movie he's ever in.
He's a name when this comes out. Like, I remember when I saw this the first time, it's like, oh, Eric Bana. Like, he's a star, right? He was A-list or close to A-list at that point. And I don't remember seeing anything else where he was kind of at that level. Like, he was kind of a draw for this movie.
Definitely. I mean...
And after that, never again. Like, if he's... I can't think of anything that I've seen him in the last, like, since this. I know he's made other movies, but like now he's like a very small supporting role in something that has a much bigger star kind of top lining it. So I think that's unfortunate.
Yeah. I mean, he's coming off basically a 8-year run that kind of...
It's like right at the end of it, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's in Black Hawk Down in 2001. And much like a lot of people in Black Hawk Down, you know, he pops, people go, man, who are all of these young, like, actors that are in this movie? We need to put them in other movies because they're all very good and they all do really well in this, right? So He does a voice in Finding Nemo, but he's in The Hulk in 2003, Troy in 2004, Munich in 2005.
It's great in Munich.
He's so good in Munich. He's amazing in Munich. And then it's 2007 is weird. Lucky You, Romulus, My Father, The Other Boleyn Girl in 2008, Mary and Max, the animated movie in 2009, which is very weird we're talking about it because the sequel, well, not the sequel, but the same filmmakers made a movie that's nominated for an Oscar this year. Like the snail shell or whatever I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
He's Nero in the Abrams Star Trek movie in 2009, up against, I think, the person who kind of took whatever he was going to be and ran with it, which was Carl Urban at that point. I think Carl Urban basically is like, has the career that Eric Bana probably could have had, post this era of time. Very similar kind of looking people with like, I guess, a potentially similar vibe. Funny People is also in 2009, which he is really good in.
I forgot he was in that movie.
Underrated movie, in my opinion. The Time Traveler's Wife in 2009, and then he takes 2 years off. He does Hanna, and then let me read you his credits after Hanna. Something called Deadfall, something called Closed Circuit. He's in Lone Survivor with Mark Wahlberg.
Deadfall. I did actually see that movie. I don't remember much, but I think Charlie Hunnam's in that.
Okay. Deliver Us from Evil, which is this horror movie in 2014. Then we've got, I'm just going to read the credits. He does 3 movies in 2016, none of which I've ever heard of. The Finest Hours, Special Correspondence, and The Secret Scripture. In 2017, he's in the Charlie Hunnam King Arthur movie. All 2017, it's called something called The Forgiven. He's in a movie called The Dry in 2020. He's doing voices in Back to the Outback and Chippendale Rescue Rangers. He's in a movie called Blueback in 2022. He's in Force of Nature, The Dry 2 in 2024. He is in Memoir of a Snail, that's what it's called. What
is this franchise, The Dry? I don't know anything about it.
The Dry is, it's a weird franchise of movies that he's in, directed by someone named Robert Connolly, and there's 2 of them, yeah. But just, no career, basically. A career. He's worked consistently.
Yeah, but he hasn't fallen off the face of the earth, but like in some sense he kind of has.
He's made no movies that we really ever heard of, and that's the thing. It's like whatever happened, he just lost that juice.
And I think, if you were not around for like the Banaissance of the early 2000s, like you wouldn't even recognize the guy, right?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. But I think he's a really good screen presence. I think he's a good actor. I mean,
yeah, I think he elevates. I mean, Troy is a terrible movie.
Yes.
What was the one before? The
Hulk.
Ang Lee's Hulk, which is not great either.
Yeah.
But he's really good in both of those. Like, he brings something to even, some terrible stuff. I'm glad he got to make Munich with Spielberg right after that. But yeah.
I mean, and one of the things for me too is like, I think he's so transcendently good in Munich that it basically, for me, gives him like blank check for this entire career. I wish he was doing more interesting stuff like Munich, because I just think...
Well, I'm surprised he didn't do more Spielberg movies. Like Spielberg tends to latch on to people like Mark Rylance or something, and they do a few things together.
Yeah. So that fight scene's amazing. I don't think that like container fight with Hanna and the 3 kind of like mooks is great. I think there are parts of it that are really good.
There's some nice shots there. Shipping containers are and also that's just a setting that we've seen like so many times in so many bad action movies. Like that is it must be a cheap place to shoot.
Yeah.
So how many times there's one of the Batman movies they do that, the A-Team, the Joe Carnahan A-Team. There's a big fight in
well, Batman Begins is a great scene in the containers. That's when he reveals himself.
I'm just sure, but we've just seen that a lot, and I wish they would have, because this movie does make a lot of choices that are unusual, right? Like the setting for the climax of this movie is really interesting, very thematically related to everything else in the film. Like, what is that? What are shipping containers? They're just colored boxes that don't really kind of do this fairy tale. Let's find an abandoned hotel or castle or something and stage that scene there, right?
And once again, it's one of the problems of the movie is like Hanna gets in that situation. In my mind, seeing what we've seen the rest of the movie, Hanna gets in a situation where she can break line of sight with her pursuers. She can stalk them from above. She should be able to take them out real easy. And she takes out that one guy. But for whatever reason, the girl follows and is just standing in the middle of the containers from all I thought it was like, I thought she was like hallucinating for a moment. That's how weird it was, you know? I'm like, how did she get here? Why would she follow her like this? You know, she killed.
Well, I think this whole thing is just about, there's one moment where there's two levels here. There's the ground level and there's the top of the containers, and they take like a flying leap, from one to the other. And I think it's, that is the cool thing, as we were talking about. There's some moments here that kind of work. But like, it feels like the whole thing is just arranged around that, and everything else is just, barren looking 90-degree angles, not very exciting.
Exactly. And I said before this, she sort of like she's like kind of snuck across the water from Morocco to Spain.
She's like a stowaway in their camper.
Yeah. The little boy knows she's there. She's hiding in the thing. She gets out. This one, she has like the fun adventure with the girl from the little girl from the family, and they go on this kind of double date, and they have their nice moment in bed, which we talked about. They kind of have like a kiss together, which is like all really kind of nice, and I think works.
Yeah, it reminds me of the sisters in Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah,
exactly. The under the covers scene there.
Yeah, all that, I think that is nice and works fine. And this whole time, it's like, I think part of this too is trying to give the movie some sort of tension or stakes. So you're like, well, now these people are involved in this, and we saw what the Tom Hollander's character did to that like innkeeper, so what is he going to do to this family is sort of like the thing that you are supposed to feel in this moment. And they played it out, they when Hanna realizes, right, that they're being followed at a certain point. She keeps looking out the window, she knows that they're being followed, and she's sort of trying to deny it to herself, right, that like, I don't want this nice thing that's happening to be broken up. Maybe I'm just, being overly cautious or whatever. But then point she realizes it. And, and that's when the container fight happens after that, because she runs away and goes in the container. She says not to follow, and they do. And then, Tom Hollander's gang take the family, and then they're being interrogated by Marissa Biegler. And I think you're supposed to kind of get the sense that they get killed, because she has that thing where she says like, oh, I hate my job today, or whatever,
Yeah.
But she kind of tricks the little boy into telling, her where Hannah's going, because Hanna told, the sister, the sister was like, you got to be honest with me if we're going to be friends or whatever. So she kind of lets her guard down and tells the truth for a little bit, ends up completely screwing her over, basically. And so that all happens. We don't know what happens to the family. Again, I think you're supposed to get that they're probably dead, but we don't get that any resolution there. The next thing we get is Hanna getting to basically like Hansel and Gretel's house or whatever, this theme park.
It's like a fairy tale theme park. Yeah, there's this very, French film kind of guy who lives there, who's an associate of her father's, and, this quirky, eccentric character who lives in this abandoned theme park. And
yes,
I don't know exactly what his arrangement is there, but he's, feels a little bit like a fairy tale character himself. We know, like from the second I saw him on screen, I was like, I bet this poor guy's going to die.
Oh, for sure. There's no way he wasn't going to die. So Martin Watkey is the actor's name. He played Hitler in Inglourious Bastards. That's probably the thing you know him the most from. He's a good actor. I don't know what this character conception was, because
it feels like straight out of a Junet movie.
Yeah, it does, but doesn't fit in this movie.
No.
Like this guy who like is completely divorced from reality, but for some reason, this like super spy trusts him with like information about his like genetically advanced,
Well, I got the impression that he is a retired, assassin spy person himself.
Yeah.
So,
it just feels like
entirely all
whimsy.
there, but I agree.
It feels like forced whimsy. That's the problem for me. It feels like, what we need here? Like a weird guy. Like that's what it feels like to me. And also, it also plays with this idea, right? That like in my mind, I was like, is this really the guy, or do they already know, because they find out where she's going? Have they planted somebody here, to like betray her? And obviously it's not the case. Much more straightforward than that, but they do show up. And we do get this, like, this is when Hanna realizes that Wiegler is alive, because she's like hiding under the bed, and Wiegler.
We skipped over the confrontation between her and her father, right?
That's next.
That's no, okay.
Because she overhears Wiegler talking about like
right. When they're okay. I was just right.
She really thinks that did she really believe that she's her father? That voice that Blanchett's doing in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And
we get a little exposition dump for Hannah's benefit here.
Yeah, and when she looks under the bed and she doesn't see her there, because Hannah's like doing a cool like suspending herself like kind of business, which I always like in a spy movie. I can't
I do
lie.
too, although I feel like Marissa's training would have taught her to maybe just look up like a
look up a little
centimeter or
bit.
two.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever. Like I said, I'm not the CIA. I don't know their
Yeah. I don't know
tricks and
what
techniques.
Ziegler's whole vibe is, what kind of work she does for the CIA, but yes. Could have done a little
Well,
bit more
certainly not
examining.
looking under Ben's work because she's not very good at it.
She's not very good at that part of it. And this is when she goes to her grandmother's house and she meets Bana there, and that's when they have their confrontation or whatever. And the movie does kind of play like it's supposed to be like a reveal, like that it's not really her father. And I'm like, guys, I've seen a movie before.
Mm-hmm.
It's obvious that it's not her father. Like, and they're even trying to play with a little bit, like, is like the story about Ziegler killing her the truth, or did the father really kill, there's like a little bit of like, they try to play that a little bit as well for a little bit in the movie.
Because that's the cover story, right? Like that her mother was killed by her father.
Yeah,
and then he took her and secreted her off to the woods. Yeah.
Exactly. And so they have like a fight. And again, I understand like it would be a big moment for this child to learn this information. She's dealing with a lot. But I'm also in the moment like, guys, Hanna, there's a lot going on right now. Mm-hmm. Can you have this conversation at another time?
Yeah. Well, she's a teenage girl.
I know.
This is a coming of age movie. The emotions are big when you're that age.
Yeah.
So, you can't always keep that in check. And that's kind of the way I read it. But
that's why I'm reading it too. But I'm also kind of like, you're like the super trained, like from birth assassin. Like, there's a lot going on right now. And then I think this last set of action stuff is really good. Like, I think Bana, killing that guy, his fight is really good. And then, obviously Ziegler shoots him, after he kind of defeats the bad guy or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to sacrifice himself for Hanna.
Yes.
Like, I think when we first meet him, the opening minutes of this movie, like, we know he's not going to survive till the end. And it's not the shock that I think the movie wants it to be.
Yeah. And again, it's one of these things where I'm like, I just don't believe any of these people could beat either one of these people. I mean, Marissa obviously sneaking up and shooting him like when he's engaged. That I like, because that's like very, her character. It fits with her character. It fits with like
it's the logical way to do it.
Exactly. But like Tom Hollander, right? Is he the one who's chasing Hanna in this last scene? I'm like, okay, like just Hannah's gonna kill you, man. Like,
wow, he really fucks that guy's shit on that. Again, the stabbing with the pipe. I was like, I've seen that in a lot of movies. I've never seen that in the PG-13.
Yeah, I'm like, she's gonna just destroy you, man. Like, it's like when Batman finally gets to the Joker. You're like, okay, like all the hard part's over. Yeah. Like, you got no chance. All right, and this is what it feels like here, right? And then again, the thing where like she runs away from Marissa, right? She's running away from Marissa, and I'm like, just turn around and just kill her. Like, I don't like we know what this is going to happen, and they try to play it off, right? Like, it's like Hanna doesn't want to kill anybody else, right? She's like, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. Like, I want
right, even though the one person she has needed to kill the entire time is literally right there. So I don't necessarily buy that either.
Exactly. And she knows she will not be left alone unless she's dead, right? She's never going to stop coming for her, and we get that point, right, where she becomes the big bad wolf or whatever, almost literally somehow getting around and coming through that big bad wolf mouth, even though she's been behind Hanna the whole time.
Love it, though. I mean,
it's very nice symbolism, and it looks cool.
It becomes very surreal. I don't know that this works necessarily as an action film in the same way like the Bourne movies have their beautifully choreographed action scenes. But at this point in this film, and as sort of lyrical and fairy tale like, and offbeat and unusual this film is, right. I don't mind it actually. I've kind of thrown any sense of realism out the window at this point, and it's like these are basically two mythical creatures, engaged in this kind of dream-like confrontation at the end. I like the way that plays out.
Again, I think the mechanics of it all work really, really well. I think it's well shot. I think it's well staged. Like you said, I think staging your action scene at a place like this, really great, because like you don't see stuff like that done very often, And I even like the way that their kind of confrontation happens with like the arrow, that she hits her with.
And the nice mirror of the opening scene,
Yeah, that she's trying just to be like, just turn around and walk away. Just turn around and walk away. Because I like that, because in that moment, I'm thinking the same thing. I'm like, if she doesn't turn around and walk away, she's going to die. Hanna's going to kill her. There's just no way. And, you get that sort of fake out where you're like, oh, did Hanna get shot like directly in the gut? But then it ends up being like just like it's grazed her hip or whatever. And we have that, the exact mirror of the opening of the movie, which she's kind of hit Blanchett in the stomach, but she's like, kind of first running and then crawling away like the deer. And then she walks right up to her and she says, "I just missed your heart." And she
There's
shoots her.
a great bit where this flume that she like falls down.
Yeah,
she kind of
yes,
slides down the slope there. I love that. I've never really seen anything like that. And and then Hanna comes up and shoots her, puts her out of her misery. Cut to the end title card. Movie's over.
Yeah. And
I remember there being more. I was like, "Oh, they're really doing it." Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, again, I think good movie, like a definite rebound from The Soloist for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I think is kind of an interminable movie, right? This one is a good movie, a great action scenes in it. I think, not a home run for me, but
I like
really
it. I mean, I don't disagree with any of her points, but I think I enjoyed the vibes of this so much, and I enjoyed what this was trying to do so much. I was able to just kind of immerse myself in it. And, I think it's like once you sort of distance yourself from taking it seriously at all and seeing it like, after a while, this becomes the fairy tale movie that it wants to be for me. And I sort of abandon all hope of this being any kind of spy movie where it is, like I said, it becomes a more sort of surreal, very sort of, off. And maybe that's the Lynch influence, I guess, but it's weird in a way that David Lynch is not weird. I don't buy that, but I do think it's, much like you're not supposed to take Blue Velvet as sort of a film about what crime is really like, I think this is a movie that you're not supposed to think this is what espionage is.
Yes, but
it's a half glimpse fever dream of a spy movie.
Yeah, I think calling it a half glimpse fever dream makes it like a much more interesting movie than it actually is. I think again, we're only bringing up the Lynch and Kubrick stuff because Wright brings it up right when he's talking about making the movie. It's just, the thing that crystallized Lynch for me finally was one critic, talking about the movies and talking about how sometimes, you get wrapped up watching a movie going, okay, but what is this? How does the last scene correspond with this scene and where is it going? And the thing I said about enjoying a Lynch movie, you don't worry about what happened before. You don't worry what happened after. You're just worrying about what's happening right then. That's the only thing you need to be worrying about.
Sure.
And of course, in this movie that's not the case, right? This movie is a very direct, very like, this is what's happening and how it's going to lead to this and lead to that, to lead to this, just with some cool staging and sort of set dressing and interesting sort of takes on action,
but I mean, like a David Lynch movie that I like a lot is Wild at Heart, which is one that I feel doesn't get talked about much. And it's basically a lovers on the lam, it's a Bonnie and Clyde, natural born killers kind of thing, heavily Wizard of Oz inspired. But like, I feel like this in some sense is that, right? Where it takes this very familiar genre and just fills it up with colorful characters and, potent moments of violence, because Wild at Heart has that too. Wild at Heart has, potent sex scenes as well, which you definitely don't get in Hanna, which is good.
No. Yeah, that's good.
But, it's kind of this, we get this impression of a genre, but it's not really that genre. It's more of a, like I said, it's an impressionistic version of what that genre is supposed to be.
I mean, I think calling it impressionistic is giving it a little bit of too much, like.
Oh, I don't know. I really, that was the vibe I got from it this time.
I mean, the thing I would say is like, watch most action movies like this in this era, and I think you're going to see a lot more similarities than you're expecting to see. That's really the thing for me is I do feel a little bit like here Wright is chasing other filmmakers, chasing other styles, and I don't think there's anything wrong with the director trying to expand their repertoire or expand their thing.
Might be, but I mean, we don't really see those, when's the last time they made like a Bourne style spy movie that was any good? And I can't think of.
I don't know. They made a lot of them for a while and then they stopped making them.
They did, but now it's like this kind of Netflix thing where they spend $200 million on a very sort of, cheesy, poorly choreographed, CGI saturated version of that. So I guess maybe, seeing this as kind of a throwback to that era is maybe what did it for me this time. Yeah. But I don't know. I really genuinely enjoyed this a lot. And as much as there are definitely some flaws in it, I really think it's a very well-made movie. I really like it.
I agree with you. I think it is very well made. So it was released on April 8th, 2011. It opened in second place behind Hop, the animated film Hop. Everyone remembers, obviously, the movie Hop.
Well, it's like the one Easter movie, so it's got that going for it.
And just ahead of another movie everybody remembers, Russell Brand's remake of Arthur.
I saw that at Arthur. I was like, oh, you mean like that King Arthur movie that we were talking about before? the Guy Ritchie King Arthur movie. I was like, oh no, it's like that Arthur, and Russell Brand was in it.
Yeah.
That's a thing that happened once.
If you couldn't, I can't imagine a worse casting for a remake of a Dudley Moore movie than Russell Brand. It's just like they're two totally opposite
but it
energies.
Like very superficially, if you knew nothing about Dudley Moore, British guy who has a substance abuse problem and is a bit of a womanizer, Russell Brand, right?
Yeah.
There is, I can sort of see it, but also, yeah. Makes
One's
no sense
like
at all.
tall and handsome, and the other one is like a short, weird, like
pudgy kind of elfin features, right? And yeah,
Dudley Moore is one of those people, and this happens every once in a while, where you're like, you look back on it, and you're like, there is no logical reason why this person became like the biggest star in the world for a short period of time, right?
He was.
Yeah, and it just happens sometimes. But I think it's so cool that stuff happens sometimes.
It is. I like Dudley Moore. I definitely prefer him to Russell Brand.
Yeah, please. I was just thinking about the Arthur theme song the other day. It's a banger. It's a banger.
When you get caught between the moon and New York City. Yeah.
What a banger of a song that is.
It is. Yeah.
It's great. I was thinking about that. I was thinking about that and about an Alfie. I was like the 2A name.
Yeah, well, I was just going to mention because they did a remake of Alfie with Jude Law not too long before this, and that makes sense. Michael Caine to Jude Law. That's a line you can draw pretty easily.
Absolutely makes sense. That absolutely.
Did you actually see the new Alfie?
I did. We'll call it new. It was like 20 years old at this point, but
the newer than the old.
Yeah, I did see it. I really barely remember it at all.
Okay, because I was. Like, I don't remember if I saw it. So that's why
I barely remember it at all.
I think I might have.
I definitely saw it. I definitely remember renting it from Blockbuster, but I do not remember anything about it other than I think Jane Krakowski is in it, and she's one of his like conquests in it, I believe. Yeah. That's what I remember. So it opened at $12.4 million that weekend, and it earned $40 million domestically, 25 internationally, a total of $65.3 million. So not a big hit. I actually thought in my memory it had done much better than that, which is interesting.
I had thought so too, although I made a profit on its budget. And then Amazon, a few years after this, had a series, which, like, do you have any inkling? Like, I think I like this movie more than you do, but like, even me, like, I don't think I need any more Hanna in my life.
So I'm not sure what that show does, if it recreates a lot of the movie and just expands it out.
The impression that I got was, it's the same story. It's
okay. Then I would have no interest in watching that at
this,
all.
And then probably maybe that's the first season, and then they sort of build out the world a little bit. But like, I don't know if I want that. As much as I like this, I think if the story is told and it's done, and I'm sort of glad this wasn't really successful, so it got a sequel that would have been, kind of a generic spy movie with Hanna.
Well, it's also one of those things where it doesn't have Saoirse Ronan in it. So like the biggest draw is not there, right?
Yeah, those are not physically big shoes, but metaphorically big shoes to fill.
It does. I mean, Joel Kinnaman played the what's his name, the Eric Bana part, which isn't
love that guy.
Isn't bad. That's also like that's not a bad casting, for that. But if my problem
Joel Kinnaman he's a very good Eric Bana stand-in too.
Yeah, for sure.
He might have been the Eric Bana for like 10 years after Eric Bana.
Yeah, he's the Timu Eric Bana.
No, he's better than I like Joel Kinnaman.
I like Joel Kinnaman as well. I totally fine. That show, what was it called? The Missing? Is that what that show was called?
The Killing.
The Killing.
Bad show, but he was great in it.
I liked that first season, but I don't.
I liked the two leads in that show.
They were great. They were great.
Morel Enos. They were terrific. I think I watched it mostly for those performances.
Yeah. He was the new RoboCop. That movie's not good. But my problem with the movie is that it's too long. It's too padded out. I can't imagine watching a 8-episode streaming series.
Absolutely. And what else do you want to add to this? I don't think anything would be.
Exactly. Don't need that. Don't need that at all. And also, the movie didn't review as well as I remembered it. Like 65% on Metacritic, 71% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like I would have, in my mind, it reviewed better, and it made more money. So that was interesting reading those stats. Roger Ebert liked it. He said Joe Wright has been known until now for civilized literary adaptations, including the wonderful Keira Knightley version of Pride and Prejudice. So us and Roger Ebert are right in line about our love for Pride and Prejudice. He's not a vulgarian. He has a purpose here, and I think it's to stir some of the same fundamental emotional parts that are reached by fairy tales, especially of the grim variety. He demonstrates that action movies need not be mindless. Hanna is good, sound filmmaking. It depends on stylistic order and discipline, a clear story map, and ingenious action sequences. It is not all banging and flashing. Saoirse Ronan takes on a difficult role and aces it with as much confidence as she did in Atonement, when she played a much different character. Man, I miss Roger Ebert a lot.
I do too. And I really like that every once in a while he would champion kind of a genre film like this, much in the Pauline Kael sort of style. I mean, this movie is a little more mindless than I think he's allowing for.
I think he's giving it more credit than it deserves a little bit. But yeah.
But, you know, I always enjoyed when he sort of looked at something like this and could see the beauty in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, things I remember about him is like, I give a lot of credit to, you know, that movie Junebug, the Amy Adams breakout, success of that movie on him, because he was like a huge champion of that movie. I know I saw that movie because he wouldn't shut up about it, you know? So he was always really good for that stuff.
Yeah, I once undertook the personal mission to see everything he'd ever given 4 stars to, and then I realized there is no way I'll ever be able to do that. But I tried. I really put in a good effort.
Sometimes I go down YouTube rabbit holes and just watch old Siskel and Ebert episodes, and it's so good. It's so good. I'm like, I can't believe this used to be on TV. It's so great. This was on TV.
Well, a couple of years ago, I showed it to some students in a television production class. Like, this was a show that you would tune into every week because they were looking for something to do for their project, and they were really into movies. I was like, do a movie review show. They're like, what's a movie review show? Let me show you. And, you know, this idea, these two sort of contentious critics arguing back and forth over movies, like, what a cool thing. I wish we still, like, I guess there is some version of that on YouTube. Like,
there is, yeah.
We're kind of Siskel and Eberting right now in some sense, but I don't know. There's something very like that formal sort of movie review show thing that they did. We'll never see the likes of that again. I enjoyed that. I learned a lot about movies from that show.
Me too. It also felt very classy because they were like they're in a movie theater talking to each other.
So much classier than us.
Yeah, and but classy, but they did talk about movies in a way that you didn't really hear people talk about movies at the time in a popular setting, right? Which was,
and they were newspaper critics, so they weren't. You know, it wasn't just about the art films. It wasn't just the
exactly
prestige stuff.
You know, and they would get snippy with each other, you know, a lot of the time. And I would always love when one of them would be like, I think this movie was terrible. And then they'd be like, I think you're the most wrong you've ever been. You know, like, I love that shit. I love that shit so much. You know, it's funny because, like, there is a version of it exists now. And I think, you know, obviously the things aren't as monocultural as they used to be, right? So you're not going to get one film critic or two film critics that everybody in the nation knows their names and knows who they are and all that kind of stuff, right? That just doesn't happen anymore. It's the same reason you're never going to get, like, you know, a Casey Kasem again or whatever. You know, these personalities exist and they're very popular. You know, you've got people who review movies who are extremely popular and stuff like that, but we do lose something with not having those, like, kind of, I guess, like, figureheads that can really push things one way or another in that way. I'll say one other note: the cinematographer, Alwyn H. Kukler, is this the Danny Boyle Sunshine that his credits on, or is it the other Sunshine?
I think it's the Danny Boyle Sunshine, which I like a lot. I
love that movie. I absolutely adore that movie. Makes sense.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you and me and maybe nobody else.
It's one of those movies where I'm just like, it's like in that Speed Racer zone for me, where I'm just like, no, you guys don't understand. Like, this movie is genius, and people are like, well, yeah, but I like it up until the ending part where it gets like kind of horror-y. And I'm like,
I think that's awesome.
Fucking amazing. What are you talking about? You know?
I also, one of my favorite, I love when the physical setting you see a movie in. I saw it at Cinestudio at Trinity College, which is a old-fashioned, you know, movie theater with a curtain and all that. And the air conditioning is always broken in there. So it was like the middle of summer, we're seeing sunshine, and it's getting progressively hotter in the theater as they're getting closer and closer to the sun. Same thing actually happened with Apocalypse Now Redux as they got closer and closer to Colonel Kurtz. It got like sweltering, like you're actually feeling, you know, this movie isn't about Vietnam. This movie is Vietnam.
Right.
Sitting in that theater felt like being in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I enjoy that very much when a movie is, you know, you get that sort of sensory experience that goes along with the film.
Yeah.
I really like Sunshine just in general. You know, I'll watch that on DVD right now and I think it's great.
In film school, I wrote grad school. I wrote a paper and did a presentation about how they shot that part where, like, the burned sun man is, like, stalking them. Because they did it all practically in camera. They were shooting it, like, they had this weird, like, mirror setup where they were, like, shooting them, and it was shooting him, and then it was reflecting back through another.
It looks very cool. I mean, I know people didn't like that the story went in that direction, and you know, calling him Burned Sun Man is actually a pretty accurate description. But I really enjoy that whole film, and I don't mind that it takes that turn. And
no, me neither.
I agree. You know,
maybe we'll do Boyle one day. So I don't want to burn all our conversation about it, but
sure.
My God, love that movie. It's like It's close to my top 10 like all time movie.
Sunshine.
Yeah,
Wow.
close. It's probably my top 25 at least. I just love it so much. I'm a sucker for like serious space movies like that.
Me too.
You know?
Hard sci-fi. I've been dying to watch this movie called Aniara from Sweden from a few years ago. I've heard it has the bleakest ending of any movie ever, which has made me kind of, holding it at arm's length. But it's a, it's one of those like generation ship kind of movies where we're trying to save civilization by going out into space, and I love shit like that.
Yeah.
So, I'll let you know how that is.
You should.
Probably not as good as Sunshine.
The Soderbergh Solaris, I love it so much.
Good.
I love it so much.
Tarkovsky, but it's
I
good.
like it more than the Tarkovsky, to be honest with you. Mostly because the Tarkovsky one is 7.5 hours long.
It's like 2 hours and 30 minutes.
It's too long.
It feels like it's 7 hours long.
The Soderbergh Solaris is like 90 minutes.
It is, yeah. It's a very condensed version of that story. By the way, have I, let me mention it on the show because I feel like this is, have we talked about the movie Bubble that I just saw for the first time? No. So that's a Soderbergh movie from 2006. It's a very low budget thing, non-professional actors. I bought it on DVD a long time ago because the music is by Robert Pollard, who's the songwriter Guided by Voices, one of my favorite bands. The music is the worst thing in the movie. It feels like he's barely even trying. But finally, I watched it the other night. It's like 80 minutes long, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. It's almost kind of feels like Midwestern American neorealism or something with these, the main actress in it. She was like the manager of a Kentucky Fried Chicken and plays, an employee. It takes place in a doll factory. This sort of
I remember the cover very, very vividly.
Yeah. There's a lot of doll heads. He kind of gets a lot of mileage out of that creepy imagery. But I was surprised how good it was, considering that I bought it just because of the music that was in it and was very disappointed with that, but kind of blown away by the movie. So just wanted to recommend it. It's a little hard to find, which most movies are not at this point. But Soderbergh's such an interesting filmmaker, and it made me think that at some point he might be, we did have this conversation.
We gotta break him up, but we can do him.
He might be the white whale for this show because there's just so much to talk about there. And he's such an interesting filmmaker. And I don't think about him much. And I think I'm a bigger fan of his and a bigger appreciator of his than I realized. And Bubble kind of crystallized that for me.
Two movies that are coming out this year. One of them's already out.
Presence.
And then he's got the, what's it called? Black Book. What is the movie with Blanchett?
Yeah. I think it is called Black Bag.
Fassbender, right. Black Bag.
Presence is like a sort of inverted horror movie, and Black Bag's kind of an inverted spy movie. Like he is working within familiar genres, but kind of doing things with them that are unusual. Yeah, I mean, not that he hasn't been talked to death already, but not by me. Like no, I don't think I've ever taken Soderbergh, taken a good hard look at what his movies are and what he's trying to do. And I've always wanted to see his Chaplin movie. I don't know. Well, Kafka was his movie.
Yeah. We just have to chop it up because it after really around the time that Bubble happens, after Bubble, he's just like, I'll make a movie every week.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to shoot it on.
Yeah. And he's doing TV series at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, the guy likes to work.
The Nick, right? Is that the one he did?
Yeah. It's a good show.
With Clive Owen, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, he's a fascinating filmmaker. I mean, Bubble's big thing was he shot it with like DV cameras. It was like
shot in the early days of digital, released on HDNet, which was one of the first HD television networks. Totally not necessary.
Yeah,
it's definitely not a crazily visual, spectacular movie, but interesting stuff. Better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, he's fascinating too because he does a lot of like he'll do something really really weird, right? Mm-hmm. But he's also got a really strong, like,
he can make a
populist
kicky, entertaining,
sense. Yeah, exactly.
Movie,
Exactly. And he bounces back and forth with them. Like sometimes he'll go on long runs, right, where all he does is his like small, weird stuff. And then he'll just, like this year, like I think Black Bag is one of those movies that has potential to like be one of those like kind of a lot of people see it because it's got two big stars in it. It's a genre that people really like,
Maybe it'll be that.
The trailer was really
good spy movie that we haven't seen in a while.
It feels like Mr. and Mrs. Smith a little bit, in like a serious way, like a serious Mr. and Mrs. Smith, because they're a married assassin couple or whatever they are.
Oh, I don't know anything about the plot. I just knew the genre.
Yeah, I mean, they're like a married, I don't know if they're assassins or CIA operatives. It's something like that. I don't know exactly. I've only seen the trailer. I haven't really read into it at all, but that's definitely what it is. And I mean, we're getting Michael Fassbender seems to be doing movies again, which is nice because
another guy that kind of looks like Eric Bana. You can kind of swap him out for some Bana-esque roles.
There's something about Fassbender though that's just a little bit more like
there's a little
interesting,
dark nerviness about him that you don't really get from Eric Bana. Yeah.
Have you seen The Killer?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's been on my list for a while.
Okay. I like that movie a lot.
I think I'm going to like that a lot.
It was a very divisive movie, but I like that movie a lot.
Everything I've heard about it makes me think I'm going to like it.
Yeah. Definitely. All right, so that's going to do it for our show. Next time we're going to be talking about Anna Karenina, right? That's the next movie, right? I'm very excited to watch this movie just from a stylistic perspective. So we'll see. But I'm in uncharted territory now. The rest of this filmography could be shit. I have no idea. It could be.
I will tell you, like when all these movies came out, I was like, I probably don't need to see that. So we are getting into some stuff that I'm not sure if I'm going to be so.
There's not that many of them though.
Like, there's three or four more?
We've got Anna Karenina, we've got Darkest Hour, we've got Cyrano, we've got Woman in the Window. Is that all there?
And Peter Pan?
Oh, Pan. I forgot about Pan.
That might be next.
That might be next. No. I think Pan's after Anna Karenina.
Okay. Well,
Let me look.
Oh, they make so many Peter Pan movies. Like,
yes, Pan is after Anna Karenina.
Okay, because there was one out like around the time of Hanna, I think, too.
Yeah, that's the PJ Hogan one, I think.
Okay.
That's one of clocks in the trailer. So that's like the first time, like.
Oh, right, we were talking about that.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, yeah. This show very briefly became intrepid Coldplay fans.
Yeah, we talked about Coldplay quite a bit. So we're talking about Anna Karenina next time. And we still don't know yet who won the tournament. It's either going to be Alfonso Cuarón or Peter Jackson. So either one of those two people will be after Joe Wright. And then it'll be Nick's pick after that to pick the next filmmaker that we cover. So we depending on which filmmaker we do, we have a long road ahead of us where we get to that, but excited to talk about either one of those filmmakers. So we'll see when we get there. IntrepidFilmographers.com. It's where you can go to get right to the Substack. You can subscribe to the podcast there. You can watch the video podcast there. And you can vote on any of these director brackets when we do the next one. So please subscribe and review the podcast. It helps a tremendous amount. You have no idea. And if you want to email us, intrepidfilmographers@gmail.com, if you want to send an email with any feedback or, any questions or any comments or anything like that. So until then, thank you, Nick.
It's Bobby.
Thank you to everybody who's listening. Until next time, be good to one another. Later.